YouTube over Twitch.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Thank you.
Okay, we are good. I'm dropping off.
Awesome. So we'll chit chat a little bit while people get up and running. And yeah, like you were saying earlier, you're a part of Techlahoma. You've been a part of Techlahoma, and I know we hadn't really gotten to talk to you necessarily. Cecily was our main person we were speaking to last year, and then if people hear this, it's not a big deal. But the whole reason of this was kind of exactly what Dodie was saying. Like COVID has put people in an interesting situation for jobs, and we just wanted to have some sort of platform where we're having this conversation about looking for those jobs. So we really appreciate that you're helping us.
Yeah, no, I think this is awesome. It's a great forum for it.
Well, let's see. And I'll just do if people hear it's okay. I'm going to drop off after kind of some initial slides. Diana will be on, and then I'll pop back in. But we'll go ahead and get started. Looks like we're live. So thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope you all have survived what was, I will say, the last 2 weeks, right? We all keep saying it was last week, but Oklahoma has been dealing with ice for 2 weeks. So I think that's why everyone is in a state of like, February is going to be over. I don't understand. So thank you everyone for joining us. And we hope that you and your family and friends fared well. I know Diana and I have Texas connections. So, I think most people I know fared fairly well, but water damage is a big issue. So if you're watching this and you struggled with the winter storm that came through, if you feel like there's no one to contact, I'm sure you can connect with us in Techlahoma, and we'll get you in contact to the right resources. So just don't feel like you're alone right now, because we know that this is a stressful time, which is really why we decided to have these monthly webinars. We know job searching is not the most fun. It's another form of dating, which is not fun as well. And so we wanted to provide these monthly webinars on searching for a job in tech. So if you are new, welcome. Please let us know in the chat. We are streaming both live on Twitch and YouTube this month. So that's really exciting because we know that some people like various platforms. And we want to thank our guest that we have today, who is Bekah Law from Hartwig Staffing. And so, Bekah, thanks so much for joining us today. Just kind of a lot of general information about this webinar. If you're new, we're a part of Techlahoma. And so Techlahoma's mission is to advance Oklahoma's grassroots technology community. If you want to click the next slide, then that would be awesome. We are a nonprofit, volunteer-run organization, and we support 25 user groups and 3 conferences, and we sponsor a lot of local free tech events around the state. So if you want to learn more, please go to techlahoma.org. We'd love to get you active and involved in our community. We're always looking for lightning talk speakers, people to present on cool topics that they're working on and projects. The next slide is, and we always want to make sure that everyone feels valued and important in our webinars and in our spaces. So we do have a code of conduct. You can go to the link here in the code of conduct to learn more information about our guidelines or to report any issues. But overall, just be awesome with us in this webinar. Be supportive. Again, we know that job search is not fun and it's a stressful situation. So we do want you to be open about situations that you've gone through in our Q&A and in our chat, but please be respectful and show dignity and respect to each other. The last part of our intro is that we want you to get involved. And so it doesn't matter your level of expertise. It doesn't matter maybe your job title, what you're trying to learn, or maybe you're in the business of technology. We want you to be a part of this thriving industry of tech development within the state of Oklahoma. We recently had a UXOK conference, which was our first user experience conference in the state. We had a lot of great international presenters and speakers, and a lot of people that were a part of that. And it just goes to show the power of our community within the state of Oklahoma, and hopefully in your future jobs and opportunities. And you can also, if you're looking at us on Twitch or YouTube, hit subscribe. We'd love to have that opportunity to get some donations from you, or you can go on Amazon Smile and select Techlahoma Foundation, because let's be honest, we're all using Amazon right now. So so let's just get started. So again, we have Bekah Law here with Hartwig Staffing, and she will be joining us for a number of webinars over the next year, as well as other members of Hartwig. If you don't know about their staffing agency, you know, at the end of the day, if through this session we can help you find a job opportunity, maybe overcome some issues you've had in the job search experience, we want to do that. But Bekah really wanted to share some of the things that she was seeing on the horizon with what was happening with jobs in tech. So I'll let you take it from here.
All right. Can you hear me okay? My audio coming through?
Yes.
All right. So thank you all for coming today. You might tell that my voice isn't 100%. I've been downing tea this morning, so I think we should be fine, but just my apologies if I have to take a few more sips than normal. But yes, thank you. I've actually been a part of Techlahoma a number of years. I'll just give a real brief snapshot of me, even though some of you might know my backstory. So I actually used to be a dev. I was a dev for about 5 years, and I was at the point where I loved coding. I loved working with people and clients and things like that, but I really wanted a chance to kind of make an impact on organizations and companies, and trying to figure out, like, how do we provide tech talent, and how do we make sure that people are getting into roles that they're qualified for and the right fit. And so I started my journey trying to figure that out. So through that, I actually got my degree in industrial organizational psychology, which is basically just anything people or business related to an organization. So that could be anything from recruiting to staffing to leadership to, I mean, just you name it. As a part of an organization, IO psychology kind of touches it. Well, that kind of brought me to like this area of recruiting. So I actually started in staffing in February 2020. So that's kind of applicable to this talk today, because that was weeks before the pandemic really hit and we started going home and going fully remote. And so the majority, pretty much my entire kind of recruiting career has been during this pandemic and seeing kind of the shift. And it's kind of been amazing. I was able to see even a vast difference in that 6 weeks to then when things hit and seeing the progress since. So I kind of have a unique like snapshot in that mind. We'll talk about this a little bit later. But during that time, I got to also take advantage of some digital nomading in October of last year. My coworker was promptly sleeping, you know, right here next to my laptop. So it's an interesting time. It's an interesting space. I never would have thought that I would go on the road to work. I never thought that I would be doing this job in kind of the state that we're in. So what state are we kind of in? That's kind of what we're talking about today, obviously. So as an overview, we're going to kind of go through what are some unemployment trends that we have seen, what impacts are those maybe making on the market. Are there any salary changes? Has that changed at all in our market? How are companies providing compensation, like benefits? What's that sort of look like? And then we'll talk about some like hot areas. Okay, so we're in 2021. What's hot right now? Like what has changed in 2020 that has affected this next year of types of jobs? And then that goes into like industries. What are the hot industries right now? Who has been kind of bulletproof in the situation that we're currently experiencing? And then let's look forward. What are some things that we can kind of do or expect as we're moving forward? All right, so unemployment rates. Now keep in mind, unemployment rates, sometimes these numbers are a little bit skewed just due to of how unemployment rates are calculated, but I still think that it's actually a pretty interesting trend. So right here, you'll see that this was right before the pandemic. You see this kind of really low, probably one of our lowest unemployment rates in history right here. And then just this stark contrast, and this high point that you're seeing is April, and so we all know that's when things started to shut down. Everybody really was sent home. A lot of things happened there, and you've seen this steady decline throughout this last year, all the way to where we are right now. Now, what this graph doesn't show you is the fact that that little last bit, we're kind of plateauing just a little bit, but still in this downward trend. Some of you are numbers people, so let's take a look a little bit at the numbers. So we see here that you've got, this is that start decline that we saw in March to April. We went from 4.4% unemployment all the way up to 14.7%. And then it has been steadily decreasing over time. And so we expect that to continue. In January, we've seen pretty good unemployment rates. But what's Oklahoma doing? Okay, so this is at a national stage, but this is Techlahoma. We're kind of really interested in Oklahoma. So what is happening at our local stage? So it's actually pretty fascinating to me. So these are the Oklahoma numbers, not for 2019, but just as a comparison to the national stage. So we kind of were around the same nationally. We didn't get hit quite as hard right there at that March like the rest of the U.S. did. But then we got hit pretty hard. In April, everybody kind of experienced that. And then it started to decline. And then this is just really fascinating to me. Somehow in June of last year, Oklahoma was doing way better than the rest of the U.S. We just saw this dramatic decrease in unemployment, and then it has stayed pretty steady. So on the whole, we're doing actually pretty well. I could probably make some guesses as to why that happens, but I don't have the data to back it up, so I don't want to be inaccurate in what I'm suggesting. But I do like that in general, we have been able to stay a little bit ahead of the curve. That doesn't mean people haven't been affected. I mean, we've seen layoffs, even just last week, we see constant layoffs. We are affected by oil and gas trends. We're affected by all sorts of things in the state of Oklahoma. And so by no means are we not affected, and we are not bulletproof towards all of these trends. We are on the whole doing better than our other states. However, here's where it gets really interesting. Again, so not only are we in Oklahoma, but we are Techlahoma, which means we are interested in tech. So what's happening in tech? This is what I find extra interesting. So I was blown away when I saw this. So in the unemployment rates in our industry, which is computer and mathematical occupations, is kind of the labor category for that, or occupation category for that. You can see here that, actually I meant to highlight the one before here, but you can see that it is a downward trend here from 3.0 to 2.4 from January last year to January this year. We are literally the only occupation in all of the, I think, 22 occupations that the Bureau of Labor Statistics surveys to have unemployment decrease from January 2020, so pre-pandemic, people weren't concerned, that was the norm, to now. And even more of an interesting trend is not necessarily the men's trend here, but it's actually the women's trend, where we had a pretty stark decrease in unemployment for women as compared to January 2020 to January 2021. So what does that mean? Okay, that means probably a lot of things. But one of the major things that shows is that you've picked a really good occupation. Like, this is the time, this is the place to be in an occupation that across the board has not only kind of taken a hit and stayed steady during this time, but to actually even be doing better post-pandemic, or I don't think we're post-pandemic, but in this, like, after now about a year in the pandemic, we're actually doing better. So that's a really kind of important trend. And the thing that also means is that you're wanted, like, you're desired. This is a good place to be. And so what does that mean for as you are trying to get a job? It means that it is a competitive market for companies. Companies are the ones that are having to compete for talent in this space. That doesn't mean, I know that IT people are affected. I know that the broad, like, tech community has been affected, that people are losing their jobs. I hear about it every day in my line of work. So that doesn't mean that we aren't being affected, but it does mean that there is a brighter outlook for this occupation as compared to other ones. But here's some of the interesting trends too, is that, so for that competition, what does that mean? It means we are seeing, so I was talking to Hartwig, who owns our company, and she has been in this industry like over 10 years. So she has seen the market, go up, go down, all the different things. And she said, I have literally never seen the salaries that we are seeing right now for tech talent. So that's exciting. But who's getting those salaries? What does that look like? And I will take a beat to mention that I do understand that when you are coming into the tech space, so you're a new dev, you're a junior person coming into this space, it's tough. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, this is a tough market. I think pre-pandemic, people had like built teams that could maybe support somebody that doesn't have as much experience and could come in. I saw a dramatic decrease of those kinds of roles where companies are like, we're just trying to figure out how to work virtually. I don't know that we can bring on somebody green at this point. But I'm starting to see that kind of trend go back to where it was. And so I really do have a positive outlook for 2021, that now people have kind of settled in. This is the new norm. This is how, like, people are experiencing life and work and the balance of those things. And so I really do think that as we go through 2021, I think we're going to see an increase in those entry level tech jobs. That's my hope. You can quote me. I hope that I'm right here, at the end of this year. Along that high salary job range, here are some of the roles that we've kind of been seeing getting some of those. So as you can imagine, like, yes, leads, managers, in Oklahoma especially, that's pretty much the only way you could get over, like, say, 120K in our market, was to be a manager of some sort, to be a really, like, a high level architect, that sort of thing. We are seeing trends that people are hitting that higher salary mark as DevOps. Now, as an important part that we'll talk here a little bit, part of that DevOps is automation field. That's where we're really seeing kind of some of those higher salaries come into play, like cloud and automation, any way that you can basically make people more efficient and show that you're making people more efficient. Those kind of keep that higher price tag. Obviously leads, but even let's say, like, I love coding, I love all this area, but I don't want to manage people. There is a spot for individual contributors as well. And what we're seeing for that, I will talk here in just a second about what differentiates a person who's an individual contributor that actually, like, can ask for that higher salary. The other place is obviously like data, as we've had an increase in kind of the need for data, and we'll talk about like why that has played a role here. But those kind of roles, those are really necessary, like BI, like business intelligence, anything like data related, like trying to figure out like what to do with all this data. Another trend has been like product owners and product managers. And so as we're building out these applications and trying to do these sorts of things, we need people that can like write user stories, be efficient, do agile, kind of learn that thing and make sure the product is going to market. And so we're seeing kind of this uptick in product owner roles and product manager roles in a pretty good price tag. Like those can be 6-figure roles and kind of up sort of thing. So that is an area that people are really needing, and really needing very technical people. So like people who can talk on both sides of the wall, you know, can talk the business talk, can talk to CEOs, can talk to the C-suite and be like, here's why, here, our timelines are the way they are, here's how we're going to produce, here's what we're going to produce. And then being able to translate requirements to like what a dev needs to know or what a architect needs to know, and really be able to talk very technical to that space. So what are some of maybe the traits that we are kind of seeing? What differentiates a person who's making 6 figures versus like not? Like what are those roles, and what are companies expecting out of those price tags? So here are things that I've really seen is they're needing someone that like that functional programming, like just being able to kind of get out the code and write the code, like is awesome, and people want that. But it's that next level that really sets you apart. So it's that ability to really be a strategic thinker, to problem solve, to be able to make things more efficient, and really like see that bigger picture and then go implement it. And maybe you're implementing it yourself, or maybe you're like kind of wrapping that up into a present and being like, here, go implement this. But that is one of the major things that people are asking. We need someone who can talk to clients or can talk to the team, can functionally like talk to people, like so can talk to this team and that team and really understand the business. And so I think that if you're interested in kind of these roles and kind of like next leveling up your career, it's that ability to be very critical, like be able to be a critical thinker. Say when you're doing code reviews, provide examples of how they can take it to the next level. Like, okay, we've got our code to function and everybody gets really excited about that. I mean, like I remember like I loved when I was like, okay, I at least just need to make this work. But then now that I've made it work, how can I make it faster? How can I make it better? How can I make it cleaner? You know, those are the types of things. And how does my little piece fit into the broader puzzle? And so that ability to think outside yourself and to be able to see how the business operates and kind of project forward, which is why data is very important, project forward like what the needs are going to be. So as we talked about, you're high in demand. And so companies are trying to get kind of creative for how they can get you, right? So I think traditionally, prior years, you know, salary's always been important and benefits have always been important. But I think that I'm seeing this trend of companies are like, okay, this isn't enough. A salary isn't enough. People are wanting a certain amount of PTO, or people are wanting, you know, these like extra fringe benefits. And what can we provide people that other companies aren't providing? And what makes us competitive in the market? Because, you know, maybe they can't necessarily provide a 20 grand sign-on bonus, which is awesome if they can, and, you know, snag that puppy up. But like, maybe we can't do that. So what are companies doing that are a little bit creative? So salary's not that creative. That's pretty normal. But the thing, you know, even retirement isn't all that creative, but I know you kind of stand apart as a company when you offer a better matching, you know, potential. And that is, by the way, just as a side plug note to all people out there, and I'm definitely looking at myself in the mirror right now, is that we do need to pay attention to retirement, however, and like be thinking about what that is. Another way that people are getting a little creative, and I especially see this to be the case in either startup companies or companies that are a little bit more trendy and that sort of thing. They're offering like stock options, things like that for their company to also try to encourage people to stick around. And this is where I've also seen were bonuses. Okay, so I think in the past, we've tended to see a quarter bonus. We've seen a yearly bonus. We've seen production bonus. So, you know, like when you go to your yearly review, like, hey, you did a great job, pat on the back, here's some money. Those were pretty typical. I'm not saying every company does them, but that was something we've seen a lot. I think one of the trends that I'm starting to see is, especially when people like are recognizing the competition for talent that they're experiencing and how easy it is for someone to just jump ship. Like, I mean, you see this in tech a lot, like a lot of industries. If you had 1 year one place, a year another place, a year another place, they'd be like, oh man, this is a job hopper, I don't want them necessarily. That doesn't necessarily happen. There are companies that really hone in on that. But as a whole, I would say in tech, that is not something a lot of companies pay attention to. But they are trying to figure out, how can we retain our talent? You know, we train someone up, they get into production, they're producing, say, at month 3 or 6, and then they leave us 6 months later, or maybe even they're leaving us at 6 months. So what can we do that sets us apart to really like compete in this market? And so we're actually seeing some like kind of, I called it here tenure, but I really mean like retention bonuses. Hey, if you stick with me for 2 years, I'm going to give you a lot of money. Or even if you'll stick with me for 1 year, I'll give you some money. And so we're seeing those kinds of things where it's like, if you'll produce and you'll stick around, I'm going to reward you for that behavior. And something that you might consider as you're negotiating your salary, like think outside the salary. Think about the whole package. Think about what are these, all of this, you know, what does the total compensation look like? And what does that outlook look like over a year, 2 years? You know, I think sometimes people want like to, hey, I want to ask for 10,000 more than you've like said, and you know, maybe they'll give it to you and that's awesome. And you ask, the worst they can say is no, or I guess they could remove that job offer, but talk to people that kind of know about that business before you negotiate that. But something else to consider negotiating is like maybe time off. Negotiate, hey, if I prove myself, will you give me, can we kind of agree to a salary bump at 6 months, at a year, or something like that? Like, let me show you what I'm worth and then do it. I'm even thinking back to like when I became a recruiter, my boss took a total chance on me. I had never been a recruiter before. I mean, I had sold so many things in high school, you know, for all the fundraisers and things like that, but I had never been in this kind of role. And so luckily she didn't make me do this, but I was prepared to say, I really believe in myself. I believe that I can do this job really well. And I'll work on pure commission. Like, you don't even have to pay me a base salary. If she's listening to this, I hope, you know, she didn't realize that she got a better deal probably than she did. But, you know, that's the kind of thing. Like, I believe in my work. I believe I can produce for you. I believe in the code that I can do for you. So give me a competitive salary, but can we kind of negotiate some other things in here? Like, do y'all do retention bonuses? Do you have some of these other perks? So that brings me to like, you know, work from home. Obviously, a lot of us or most of us are probably in this like remote category or wanting to be, like, as you're doing your job search, or like, the good news is those jobs are increasing. Like, I would say that when I started as a recruiter a year ago, we might have had one remote job. I think we almost probably didn't even have a remote. The only kind of remote options we had would be flex schedules. So people that could work from home a couple times a week or something like that. So we're definitely seeing, I mean, you talk about 2021, and I'm actually going to talk about this here in a little bit, so I don't want to talk too much about it now, but we're definitely seeing an increase from that. But what does that look like long term? Like, are they planning on continuing that remote possibility? Is that something that's important to you? Do you like going into an office? And so it's kind of like prioritizing your list. But we are seeing a trend of increase, you know, in that way. We're also seeing companies providing paid benefits. So like employee only, like they will pay the health, you know, insurance, or provide some of those other things. So again, as we're from 2020 into 2021, companies are getting more creative. So I encourage you to get more creative. Kind of think outside of the box, just like, I want 80 grand, or okay, I want whatever you want. Be thinking about, what do you prioritize, and can this company prioritize the same things that I do? All right, so what are some hot areas? I actually want to jump down a little bit to AI. I don't know if this 100% falls into this category, but I loved the fact that, so when I went to go make this presentation, I just kind of added in my bullet points, and then I go over to this like design feature, and suddenly it picks all these icons for me pretty much perfectly. Like cloud, data has these little bars, AI, you know, kind of like how the mind and technology kind of coincide, and like DevOps automation, you know, being kind of those cogwheels. So I was super impressed by, not only did they give me cool design features, but they actually gave me relevant icons. So that is something that's huge now. Like, I mean, the ability to, and this is, y'all were talking about UI UX. My goodness, like the explosion in that area. I think we had maybe like one or two UI UX jobs like a year ago. I think I have like 5 or 6 right now. People are really wanting to know, like, how can I take advantage of, like, how, like, make sure that my product really gets across, that people can really see and know how to interact with this device. It's not just about making it pretty, it's about making it functional, and that user experience is becoming really important to people, which really excites me. And I hope that more people do that, because I oftentimes go to something and think like, they obviously don't have somebody really focused in this area. So that's something, an area, and I loved that we had a conference here virtually in Oklahoma City recently, that sort of thing. It is showing that that is a hot area. What are some other hot areas? Automation. Anything that you can do to reduce the time that it takes to go to production, to release something, make sure that it is bug-free when it does so, cloud space, like anything related to that. So like DevOps comes into play, like QA jobs like are exploding. People are actually realizing, hey, maybe it is better to realize ahead of time like what's going on before like getting to production and then just everything exploding. But any piece of automation, so if you get a chance to interact with AWS and Azure, like any of those kinds of spaces, like take the opportunity, because I am seeing those increase dramatically for almost every role that we work on. I mean, we're talking of anything from infrastructure. Well, we want like cloud infrastructure. We want to know like cybersecurity, like that sort of thing, to like just development. Okay, well, we're actually have an AWS backend and we expect people to code in that. And so like that sort of area. So any chance that you get to kind of touch cloud and touch cloud technologies, take that chance. It will set you apart. Like, yes, I'm a C#.NET developer, but I also know how to stand up XYZ. Like that really will stand you apart from other people. And I will make a side note here. If you have these, or really any technology that you work with, make sure it's on your resume. Make sure that it's on your LinkedIn on these things, because you might have touched a lot of things and you think, oh, it's not that relevant because I haven't done it maybe for pay, or I haven't done it with my current job. But if you can like intelligently, apparently I can't even say that word, if you can intelligently talk about a project that you worked on and the reason why you worked on that project, like put that down. However, I will also say, don't put down stuff that you can't talk about, and then you can't talk about how you've done and what you've done with that project. That's a side note, not really related to our current talk, but something that I see a lot. So AI, in those areas, I mean, even like now you're talking about Amazon and like ability to even like virtual reality kind of also like comes into play here, where you're talking about the ability to, hey, I'm interested in this couch. Yeah, now I can like visualize it in this space. So design, virtual reality, that sort of thing. Judging by my description of that, you might be thinking to yourself, you don't know what AI is. You're absolutely right. So I would like y'all to let me know more about that space. But that is an area that's really increased. Data. So this is super hot, super like an area that people really need help in, and trying to figure out trends, trying to figure out, hey, we really like, we have all this data and now we need to do something with it. And in the next slide, I'll talk about a particular industry where this has just exploded. But these are kind of some hot areas, so that if you have a chance to sort of dabble with them on the side, or any chance you can get to even in your current employer be like, hey, I'm going to take on this. Like, are you good with me like taking it on and showing them a prototype, anything like that? Take advantage of that. So what are some hot industries? People are at home. They have kind of more time on their hands, that sort of thing. So we've seen an increase in online education and skills platforms, any sort of kind of online platform in that like space. And so these are some industries that we're seeing as we're going into 2021 that have done really well through the pandemic, and they expect to increase. Transportation and logistics. So one second. Actually very impressed. I went this entire time without taking a sip yet.
You're doing a good job, don't worry.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I know when you're on the stage, you start to wonder if anybody's even there anymore. So I appreciate you coming in and telling me my connection hasn't disconnected or something.
And by the way, earlier we didn't say anything, but Rebecca gave you a little laugh about your hiring process.
Well, yes, and remind me later if we get time at the end. Somebody, if you want to ask me how I got my job that I got, that's actually a pretty interesting story too. So somebody write that in the chat, and I'll answer that at the end of the session. So. One major industry that has just done so well is the transportation and logistics industry. As was mentioned, Amazon. I mean, I actually had to have, my partner calls it a February freeze, where we decided to not spend money other than like, groceries and food and the basic things that we have to do. And it, I think, has luckily like just curbed a little bit of my incessant buy now. So as a result of that uptick in usage and people wanting things and people wanting it now, and we even saw memes, I think, over the, sadly, like over everything going on with those snowstorms where people were like, I think this is the longest time I've been without an Amazon package, you know. But as you've been seeing that uptick, you've got the whole industry that is required in order to make that work. And so those industries, like the industries with trucking, making sure that packages are arriving. And so you've got some really cool tech behind those. Sometimes those industries actually are on the cutting edge of tech, because you can imagine, like, they need to know, like, when something's going to be coming. Right now, like, we expect to know to the, like, second, or at least, at the very least, the hour at which something is going to be, you know, coming in. And so they need those trucks to be, you know, have all of the tech on that to be able to know. And everybody's holding those, like, digital applications, like sending you a picture of, hey, your package has arrived. So this is an entire industry that is just very hot right now and has a very promising future in all of the tech behind that. So healthcare has been an interesting industry as we're coming from 2020 to 2021. In some ways, it's kind of taken a hit. We've heard about increasing unemployment rates in certain roles in the healthcare industry, but there has also been a super uptick in the tech related to healthcare. Because I'm sure a lot of y'all saw that just this last week down in Norman, Emmy Labs was able to give out 10,000 vaccines. Wait for this, paperless. They did the entire process without having a paper. And I think that that's actually very important to mention. And the reason for that is because I've been in a part of a research study. I got a vaccine. I'm a part of a research study for that. Every time I go in for my checkup, they have changed something, you know, on the research study. And so they offer me the packet at which they have changed, you know, one word. And the packet is like this thick, printed off. And I'm like, no, I would like that emailed, thanks. So you can imagine the amount of paper that is wasted in healthcare. But to be able to put that off paperless, that is a massive amount of data that they had to then transfer to the state and like the federal level. And so there are people working tirelessly behind the scenes to get those applications into place, and get all of that working, all of the, like, R&D associated with healthcare and trying to get this pandemic under control. So that's an area.
Can I add something to that? And maybe for those of you looking for a job and you're new, and this is just because I personally know the situation a little bit with Emmy, that the individual who is building a lot of the web applications for all of their scheduling, and while how people are getting notifications for a 10,000 person pod, that individual graduated from college 2 years ago. And he went to OU, and I know who he is. But I just wanted to point that out because he was not trained on how to do that. He took on other projects to learn general scheduling, and he laughs that he's like, who knew I was going to have to do scheduling stuff at OU, and now I'm doing it for Emmy. And I'm like, but this is such a bigger needed in-demand skill, and the turnaround time, and think about how that's going to look on your resume if and when you leave Emmy. So I think with a lot of the stuff you said earlier about working on projects, learning new skills, capturing that information, all of these different industries, for some of them, this is all new. And so they're really looking for younger people. And then the other funny thing is Emmy said that they looked, who do we all know is really good with logistics? Chick-fil-A. They went and they followed how Chick-fil-A gets you in and out of that drive-through, and that's how they determined how they could figure out how to get people in and out of the pod.
Love
And
that.
so it's, you never know where your expertise could fall into something. And so I think I just wanted to point that out, because I think people think, oh, you need to have done X, Y, and Z for so long. Well, for Emmy, this was all new when COVID started. So they just happened to have the right person who was willing to like try and work hard and probably long hours. But I mean, those opportunities are there.
Yeah. No, I love that. And some of those industries I've definitely also seen, they also take a chance at that talent that's kind of newer. I've seen specifically them hire some junior people and that sort of thing, where other companies aren't necessarily, but they're like, hey, let's just figure this out together. So I love that. Thank you so much for that additional information. Real quick, the other places you see like hot industries would be like dating and live chats. You can imagine like right now, I mean, like Zoom, all of these, what we're literally doing at the moment with Twitch, and now it's on YouTube. I mean, all of these types of things and all of the technology that is required in order to make that happen. And again, the user experience that's required to make people have a comfortable experience, and imagine all of the infrastructure people that are necessary to be able to make sure the downtime is kept to an all-time low, type of thing. Also, as we're talking about like people buying stuff and buying things online and everything, you see a really constant trend for e-commerce platforms, resale markets, that sort of thing. And then as well as like entertainment, maybe not some of the ways that we saw entertainment before, but you're talking about online gaming, mobile application, many games like associated, entertainment associated with that, whole industries surrounded by like, how can we now have board game night, but virtually. So these kinds of industries are really hot at the moment, and I think we'll continue that trend through this year. So finally, before we go to the real quick looking forward, remote, what has that provided us? It has provided us that companies can now look for talent state lines and vice versa. Now you're able to not only be, I can only look at this Oklahoma market, but I can actually work for a company in Silicon Valley, but pay rental prices or housing prices here in Oklahoma City, which is going to be a lot lower than it would be somewhere else. And so we're definitely seeing that. There's an increase in available companies. We've been seeing some pretty large companies kind of be very outspoken about the fact that, you know what, we're going virtual, or we're going virtual permanently. You can permanently work from somewhere else. And that just had happened with, maybe some companies, but there's been a dramatic increase in that. Virtual interviews, all of these things where people are interviewing online. You might not even meet the team, that sort of thing. And so how do you do that in that space and prepare? And we can talk more about that probably at a chat later on this year about like, how do I show and connect with people, build rapport via this space. And then digital nomading, that has definitely, we've seen an increase. I got to do that. I got to travel and work. And actually my production, my boss is on here, she can, attest to it, my production increased. And so can you show increased production working remotely? And that's actually one thing that I want to say about my final slide going forward, is that are we going back to the office? It depends. There are plenty of jobs, and I know that I've seen some frustrating comment, like people are so frustrated, like Oklahoma or LinkedIn, like saying companies like stop saying, like we're remote until COVID, that sort of thing. There's some companies that probably will definitely go into the office, like that they might have maybe some sort of hybrid schedule where they're in the office or working remotely. Some people like the office, and I think that's great. And I think that it's nice when that can be an opportunity. But you just decide what is important to you. What do you need? What's important to your family, and what makes your family work. But if you are wanting to stay remote and wanting to show value, figure out ways to show that you are more productive working from home. Show how you've been productive. And maybe this should be a topic we talk about later this year. How do I'm productive working from home if you don't have maybe those numbers and trends prior to working from home. Another thing is that's important to you. Snag up those 100% remote jobs now. They are increasing. They're out there, and so be on the lookout for those and go ahead and snag them up and lock that down. And then my final point before I'm opening it up to questions is just go ahead and update that resume. Even if you're not ready to make a move, maybe there's just going to be this really amazing opportunity, like she mentioned with Emmy and like OU, like, hey, there's an opportunity to like build this new application or this new product in logistics and transportation or in one of these other like hot industries. Just be prepared and be prepared to show what tech you've worked on, show the projects. If you're a junior, one of the major things I always suggest is go ahead and just show those projects, show that you're working, show that you're interested, that sort of thing. And go ahead and update your resume now so that you're not like trying to fumble, because though you are desired, it is still a competitive market. And there are still plenty of people looking for a job, and so you do want to stay ahead of that curve. So that is my presentation. And so I'll open up to questions or comments or thoughts.
All right. So, and if you have any questions, feel free to put them into the chat. We had a couple of people earlier who were asking about what other markets we were going to discuss, but we had some of our members just chime in that this was an Oklahoma focused session. So, but I do believe a lot of the trends you mentioned in this later half of the presentation, that's stuff that we're seeing everywhere. I've been listening to Startup Grind is having their global conference right now. They mentioned like multi-skill, AI, green hydrogen, virtual tech, health, and really everything digital, contact tracing. Those are different companies and startups that are getting up and running. So they all need talent. And so I think there's a lot of potential that everyone could kind of learn new things over the next couple of months to help them out. Let's see, we did have somebody ask in regards to collaboration tools, what recommendations do you have for when you're working remote to connect with your team? I know I mentioned, Slack or Teams, something that allows you to communicate day to day. But I think this is probably something great to share just in regards to if you're not using it, this might be a good time to learn those tools.
Yeah, no, we've actually encountered that in our own team over the last couple of weeks, just having this very conversation of how can we keep everybody in the know? Because typically when you're in the office, you might overhear like, oh, so-and-so is working on this, that sort of thing. But now how do we work in a virtual space? So there are plenty of like project management tools that could be helpful. I'm not a, what I don't know what the word is, but I'm not suggesting that these are the end all to be all, but one that I've looked into is like called ClickUp. They have committed to always having a free version, which I always think is like really important. And so it's basically kind of where there's an app called Todoist. So anything that can kind of help you keep track of your lists. I don't know if you're like me, but I love checking off that I've done stuff. And so I use this in my personal life as well as my work life, just making sure that you're staying productive. What's nice about that is actually ClickUp even has sprints where you could build in milestones and sprints and agile, like making sure that you're tackling the things that you want to tackle. And so that is one major way that you could show your production is be like, hey, here are our due dates, and we are consistently meeting our due date. And if we're not, here's why, that sort of thing. But yeah, Slack is a great option. Microsoft Teams, anything that you kind of have within your organization already. And I know that y'all would probably be better than me at this, but even like Slack allows you a lot of automation to like kind of automate some of like when people even say certain things, you know, it automatically pops up with a form or a funny, you know, GIF or something like that.
And someone even mentioned, Sarah said that their team has started using Marco Polo just as a fun thing. So I think that's the other part of it, right? There's the work related stuff, and then how do you add that fun element as you're working with people? John asked, can new devs start out in a
Oh, I think my connection, either my connection or
I think it might be Kristen's. So John asked, can new devs start out in a remote position, or does that pretty much not happen?
No, it is happening right now. I think that when you're talking about like companies, some companies are literally all 100% remote, and no, like onboarding is happening remotely, all those things. So I definitely say, like, yes, you can get a job even as your first job out. But it's important to know that you need to be as proactive as possible when you are starting out in a new role. And this would be the case for everybody. But just make sure that when you're kind of going through that onboarding experience, ask the questions that you need to ask, like find a buddy, you know, when you get into that job that you know, like where you can go to ask for information. And don't be afraid to just jump in. Like, don't wait for someone to tell you what to do. Like, that is one of the major things, that complaints that we get from companies is so-and-so is just like expecting everything to be handed to them. Like, but go out, like show your worth, show your impact. But yeah, for sure, you could start a job as a junior dev remotely.
Sorry, I cut off. I'm breaking the internet at work. It looks like that's all of the questions. How can people connect with you if they're kind of processing all this information and want to catch up with you later?
Yeah, absolutely, and please do. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm online. It's my long name. So Rebekah, Rebekah Law. I have a super easy last name, Lew. I'm on the Techlahoma Slack channel. You'll see me probably the most on the jobs board channel, but feel free to direct message me there. I'm at Bekah Law there. You'll find me those cute pictures of our dog and digital nomading. You can find me on Instagram as well. And so, but yeah, and then my email, if you want to just reach out to that way, would be Bekah, Bekah, at hartwigstaffing.com, HARTWIG staffing.com.
All right. Well, thank you. Sorry, it looks like I'm freezing again. I don't know what's happening with the network.
No, that's all right. That's that infrastructure piece. We need someone to come take a look at that.
And I'm in education, so we didn't even add what education needs right now or talk about that so much. So that's something to consider, everybody. So thank you all for joining us today. We're about to hit the top of the hour. Rebekah, thank you so much for all of your information. Again, we streamed this today on Twitch and YouTube, so thank you to Dodzy, who's one of our Techlahoma board members, for being our awesome technical assistant, production manager, everything. So that's how we're able to come to you guys via stream. And if you would like to get involved in Techlahoma, again, connect with us. There's all sorts of ways that you can get involved. And again, if it's a matter of looking for that new job and needing a new skill, let's get you connected to somebody within our Techlahoma community so that we can help to add to your resume and your portfolio, because I know lots of people are needing help right now. So everyone, have a great rest of the day. Go out, enjoy the sun, even though I think it got a little cloudy here in Edmond, but go outside, enjoy your day, and let us know if we can help. Bye, everyone.
Bye.